Right now, when I was walking over here, I still felt like I belong here, like I feel at home, which I still don't feel somehow in the US after years.
If Beirut could just get its shit together, it would be a good place to live.
Really, in comics, it has to be so fun. I learn how to do posters by doing these every month. I think now there's a lot of really young, talented people taking over here. Being in the US has blocked my work more than being here.
Comics journalism. If you were to describe it to a teenager, what is this medium? Like, why does that term even exist?
I just read footnotes on Gaza. You couldn't do this in a normal documentary. Drawing gives something different. Sometimes there is a bit of commodification of the culture here. I'm really sad they closed this year. A lot of people I know can't really make it in the arts and they have to do something else. So yeah, you have to find the right place.
Do you feel like you found it? Welcome to the Afikra podcast. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today in the series, we have Tracy Chahwan, who is an illustrator, an artist, a journalist, a comic illustrator, many different things. And I was just saying that I feel like you're a part of the city in very meaningful ways. So it's amazing to have you in the studio. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad you're saying that because it's hard now living abroad. Like you have this crisis. So yeah, I'm glad I still feel like this.
How do you feel on the inside? You're walking around Beirut. Do you feel like you know this place?
Yeah, it's mixed feelings, of course. But yeah, right now when I was walking over here, I still felt like I still belong here. Like I feel at home. Which I still don't feel somehow in the US after years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yesterday somebody said something to me and I got super defensive. And I want to see how it feels to somebody like you. Okay? So I was out and it was with a bunch of Lebanese people, all of whom are here for the summer. And somebody said, man, if Beirut could just get its shit together, it would be a good place to live. Okay? And I had like a very natural reaction, negative reaction to this. Because for me, I'm like, we have a genocidal neighbor. This is like, who can have their quote unquote shit together with this neighbor?
Yeah.
This type of thing. Like, and no, how is it even possible? Right?
Yeah.
And so, and it made me reflect on the number of people who have been part of I'll just talk about the cultural scene, but have been part of the cultural scene here for my lifetime, who are doing insanely good work. It's like true, really first, like globally relevant work, world-class work in this setting. And I was wondering, how do you feel about that type of sentence? So now you live in Philly. If you heard that type of sentence, how do you feel about that?
Honestly, it's funny because the US, which is supposed to be like number one superpower or whatever, also feels like it doesn't have its shit together at all. Yeah. So, and I see a lot of parallels between here and there. Yeah, I don't agree with this. I feel like people are more miserable, not more miserable there, but it's much harder to make it as an artist there. So yeah, I don't definitely agree. I think a lot of people are doing amazing things here despite everything. And I say this a lot when I'm there because I see like it's much harder to make it there, or you make it very big, or like it's really you're struggling and you have to work 3 jobs or something.
Yeah.
So
why? Okay, so is it just the economics of it? It's just harder to live. The rent is higher. Everything is higher. Or is it just lack of community, lack of support?
Definitely a mix of both, I think. There you have to make it on your own. It's really expensive. So a lot of people I know can't really make it in the arts and they have to do something else, work in a restaurant, whatever. And yeah, there's much less community, definitely harder. Maybe in Philly where I live, it's a bit better. But still, I don't find a lot of artist studios, collectives. There's a lot of great artists in the city, but it's not this unified thing. Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of this world-class work, I feel like all of a sudden I was used to, I told you this before we started, like you kind of wallpapering your work, like wallpapering my experience, like walking down Bliss or walking in Jemaise or on Hamra and just seeing like posters, just like 45 of these posters in a block advertising like a BGC night or something. And instantly like recognizing this work, obviously. And then all of a sudden in the last few years since COVID, seeing not that work not here, but instead being commissioned for some like publication online, some like global publication online. And being like, I feel like in a way they're stealing the soul, but then I'm also really, really happy that you're getting this recognition. How does it feel for you? Like when they reach out to you, do they want you to do the same style? Do they like, what do they? What
who, like,
like
you mean in general? People who commission stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on the publication and who is. But I think for music stuff, usually, usually they want you to do your thing, definitely.
Yeah.
It really depends if then you're working for something like an organization, blah, blah. But for music, it's mainly, I was so lucky, honestly, to get this kind of work when I was just starting out.
Yeah.
It happened very organically with Ernesto and Natalie from the BGC. They wanted to do something different and illustrated. And I was just like, of course, I was still studying, I think. And I think this is really like very lucky to have this in your career to start with, because you can experiment a lot and it's music. So it's very free. It's not like, I don't know, a political poster or an editorial article. So it made, like, I learned how to do posters by doing these every month for years.
I want to actually talk about that. So who were some of your inspirations? Because there's a very specific style. It feels playful and subversive, but also like accepting. It doesn't necessarily feel like give off this like cool kid vibe. It's like this is but it is obviously super cool.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to think. Who's my influences?
On those series in particular, I feel like.
I don't know. You know, it's hard to know. It's always a mix of things, obviously. I feel like a lot of it maybe has to do with growing up in the 90s, 2000s. I really loved MTV. I know it's cliche, everyone loved MTV, but I really feel like at that time it was very creative. Like I remember being a kid and being struck by like the animations they did or the ads that they had. Like, and you know, growing up in that era, the music we listened to. So I don't know if that's a direct influence. Then there's the comics I like, maybe the styles I like can be different people.
Yeah. What did, like, as a kid, what were you reading?
What was I reading?
In terms of like actual like comic books and stuff like that.
Yeah, honestly, the comics I was reading have nothing to do graphically, or maybe they do, but I was reading more of the, Franco-Belgian stuff more than the American stuff. It's funny because I feel like my style is more American than, although I didn't really like the aesthetic of American comics. But yeah, I grew up, as a kid reading the basics like Tintin or what else, Asterix or Spirou magazine, which was really cool, I think, back then. Yeah, and then some more adult stuff as a teen, like, but also still in the Franco-Belgian, I think, more than the mangas or the American stuff.
Was there a moment when you started feeling more comfortable featuring, I don't even feel comfortable saying like explicit stuff, but exploring this sort of like slightly subversive content in these posters and in your work, where, I mean, somebody who doesn't know, has never been here or hasn't been to this even part of the world would be like, the Arab world, super conservative. This is a very, wrapped up place. Everyone is very conservative. We all think a specific way. But if they see your work, it would tell a very different story. When did you actually say, oh, I don't mind actually featuring this stuff?
I think, when did I start doing, it was maybe 10 years ago. Oh my God, depressing. Maybe 10 years ago or a bit less, I started doing the poster. We had kind of a good few years before the last few years, you know what I mean? So, I never felt any need to censor or maybe a bit on some nudity, but I think most of the posters that had nudity, it was still kind of surreal figures, like a pink woman or whatever. So no, sometimes I would consult about this. I would ask the clients, do you mind if we see the breasts or whatever? And they would be like, oh, I think it's fine as long as it's an illustration. It's different also. Yeah. And I think, the last decade until some point, it was still kind of fine. Yeah.
So I've heard you describe yourself as a journalist in some way, right? And it's usually hyphenated, right? It's usually illustrator, journalist, or something like that.
Not me and myself personally, but maybe some people, because I did comics journalism.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of comics journalism, if you were to describe it to a teenager, what is this medium? Why does that term even exist, comics journalism?
Comics journalism, I don't know, now it's become really popular.
Yeah.
I think back then, it's just the last maybe decade or so. But back then there was only Joe Sacco, I think. I don't know if only, but he mainly did popularized at least.
The Palestine series and stuff.
Yes, the Palestine series and Footnotes on Gaza. And he made it a full thing, because the books are huge, 400 pages maybe. And the last few years, I think mainly, I don't know, but I know mainly of the US and France had big platforms for it. The Nib in the US, which I worked with, became a huge thing, I think, covering so many subjects, employing tons of people. And that was a great time. I'm really sad they closed this year, because it was really a work for so many artists, and it's relatively well paid, and you're paired with a journalist. So sorry, I didn't really answer your question.
No,
And I think it's not just the fact. Sometimes it's mistaken for something to. I don't know how to say in English. Vulgarize, in French, it's vulgariser. To get something more mainstream to understand the news.
Yeah, to dumb it down.
Yeah, dumb it down. Okay,
yeah.
And I think it's actually different than this. If you read, I just read a few months ago Footnotes on Gaza. It's just you couldn't do this in a normal documentary. I think drawing gives something different. The relationship with the subjects. They're drawing the environment, the details. I don't know.
What does it do to you though, as the actual illustrator, that process of actually creating and permitting and permeating those emotions? That means it actually has to flow through you specifically.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's different than the journalist who just writes the facts, or maybe sometimes. Sometimes they give whatever their story or something. But I think when I first did something a few years ago, it was related to Syrian refugees being scammed in Lebanon. And for me, it was an exercise, how do I talk about this? Or, how do I approach this with drawings? And for me, it's finding in every frame maybe something metaphorical that's added to the story, or something symbolic in the drawing to convey what the people are going through, everything. So it was very interesting exercise for me to not make it boring and yeah, but I haven't done it in a while. I think the last one wasn't related to politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like as when I see stuff like that, I always wonder if it comes from the same place, like if it actually comes from the same place in you. When you approach that type of project, like the Guantanamo project that you did,
Yeah.
which is in some ways, obviously, literally like thousands of miles from here, from this context, but it rhymes. It's like a very similar type of systemic problem.
Yeah.
The one there and the one that you're used to and that you've been exposed to for most of your life here. How does it actually feel to do that rhyming game and apply your framework and your perspective to a problem like what's happening in Guantanamo?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it happens. I didn't think about it back then, but yeah, the links happens pretty naturally in your minds.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere I didn't know much about before I did the project.
How did it come about?
How did it come about? I think through the NIB, because I worked with the NIB before. Someone who was an editor there, the author, was gathering different artists, and yeah, it happened like this. A lot happened through the NIB, honestly. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some of the stuff you're working on now, that you have been working on now, and then I want to contrast it. So, what are you working on these days?
What am I working on? So I think a few posters as usual. Something for a parade in Philly. It happens every year. It's called Peoplehood Parades. It's really cool. I like doing stuff that's related to a community, also not just like a random article or whatever. And so it's a yearly parade where they do like huge puppets, different kind of costumes, and they tackle different like political issues in the city. So yeah, I'm super glad that it shows me this year, like because I like doing this kind of work. Yeah. And what else I should remember? I might have something bigger coming soon, but I don't know if I can talk about it yet. So I have to do tests for that, and yeah, otherwise music stuff.
Yeah, with your style being so like recognizable, I always wonder if like illustrators or artists ever sort of if they're ever interested in almost like completely ditching their style entirely and say khalas, no, it's almost like cross-dressing, like I'm just going to completely hide in a new style and feel how it's almost like writing left-handed, like khalas, I'm just going to totally tie my right hand behind my back and force myself to explore something new.
Definitely. No, I feel that a lot, and sometimes
you fantasize about this process.
I mean, not completely different, but I think it happens naturally, and it happened last year. I was giving like a talk in the university I studied in, and someone asked me like, "Oh, you used to do much more detailed stuff when you started." And I was showing my latest work. I was like, this is much more simple. And I was like, yeah, actually, I think this happens too a lot, where you're like, how can I draw more like in a simple way? But it's actually as powerful. I think you want to be, when you're younger, you want to impress more and like do all these details and stuff. And so that changes, at least for me, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's normal also. Your style changes naturally, and to allow yourself. Like, I don't know if I would radically change it, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that Jay-Z line, "You like my old shit, buy my old album." You're like, khalas, if you like this old stuff, just go get my old stuff.
Yeah, that's sad. I hope it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah. I want to go back to the idea of you being here. How has the comics landscape changed since you started
here? Yeah,
here.
There's a lot of new, really cool people, very passionate. But yeah, it's different. The people I knew, my community, most of us are abroad. So yeah, that's changed a lot. Like when I started out, also I was so lucky to to join collectives with my friends, some of them who I studied with. When I think about it, it's a really cool way to start, like, because I'm still comparing to the US, but you don't see that a lot there.
Like give us some of these names. Like when you first started out, you went to Elba afterwards.
Yeah, I went to Elba, which was already like super good environment to be in, because it's really people who study that are really passionate about it, because, you know, there's not a lot of money involved. So there was this community already. And then first we did a collective called Ziz with Karen Kairouz, Amr El-Fil, Noor Hifawi, Rawand Aissa, and Carla Habib. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. And so we were all fresh, like from university, and we like experimented with different ways of publishing, different ways of printing. And then later some of us joined Samandal Comics, which had been going on for like a decade or so. And doing more like professional anthologies. And so, yeah, you learn a lot also from that. And just to be in an environment where like people, you know, you encourage yourself to make stuff. Yeah. That really helps, I think.
What are some of the anthologies that you worked on at the time? Because I'm curious, I want to try to understand like how you approach these types of projects, especially when you're part of a collective. Like, what is the difference between working on it on your own and working on it for a client in a collective environment?
Sorry, say again. So what anthologies?
Yeah, like I'm curious at that time when you were working on some anthologies, how did you approach them? And I'm trying to understand the difference between working on them when you're working them on in a collective versus somebody just like, hey.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, most times when you work on comics, it is like a more of a collective work, because you have like the editor involved, sometimes the writer, or if I write it myself. But for Samandal, I think I did a comic in 2 of them, Topia, which I don't know if it's still in the market. It was like the editor-in-chief was Raphael, and she did this whole thing. It was all Riso, like 3 different versions, Arabic, English, French. Anyway, so I worked on this one. I did a comic. That was a fun comic. It was, I don't know if you saw it. It's like...
I don't think so.
It's called Don't You Know Who My Mother Is? And it was like a future dystopia in a near future where like a military dictature with like women are running... the country, and so it's all like gender bending, and it starts with a guy who's getting harassed by all these women, and then this woman comes on a bike and she saves him, and she has this like fuck boy energy. Fuck woman, I don't know how you say it, sorry. And then you find out, so she saves him and she kind of harasses him in a manipulative way. And then you find out she's the daughter of the big military woman on top. Anyway, it was really fun to work on. That was my first work with Samandal. And then, I worked on the experimentation anthology. I don't know if you saw this one.
No.
This one was really cool. It won like the prize for indie comics in Angoulême, and so it was an interesting experiment where you have the same story, but in I think Arabic, English, French, and silent. So you have the same script, but another artist will have it in another language or in silent. So I had the silent one. So you have the script, but you cannot write any words. So that was a really cool one, yeah. And since then I edited. So we started doing the Open Call magazine again, which is like anyone can submit. It's not as curated. So I just worked as an editor mostly. Yeah.
Samandal feels like this this is such an important institution, and there's all these people who were part of it and sort of came in and out of that. So when you come back here now, do you feel like that still exists, but you're just not part of it, and you're just kind of walking around. Like, I don't know anyone in the room anymore.
Well, no, because we moved to France. I mean, we moved the organization kind of. It's between here and France, but it's not as active here anymore because most of the members are outside. Last year, we felt kind of a comeback because we printed the new open call, and it had been, I think, a few years, since COVID, we didn't do any events in person here. So that felt good because people came, a lot of people came. It felt like really a magical community night again.
Yeah.
So there's still moments like this, but definitely it's not as active as before. Yeah.
How much of the stuff that you work on is personal, like where you're putting yourself at the center? I feel like in some ways illustrators are like photographers in some way. Whereas there's like photographers who really disappear, and they try to remove themselves out of the frame, and you don't feel them.
Yeah.
They're just like voyeurs. And then some of them, they're like, whether they are in the frame or not, you feel them big time. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I'm curious for you if you allow yourself to explore your own personal story and your own personal thinking and feelings in your work.
Yeah, I did that for a while. I think when I was starting out, I did that more, definitely. I think now... it's something I think it's something that a lot of illustrators feel too, that I've talked to a bunch of friends, where you kind of miss the times before before you were more public. Let's say your work was more public or established, and you kind of miss where you didn't have think about the way it's perceived. And I see that in a lot of friends too, and it's not that I feel like I'm anxious about the way the work's gonna be perceived, but it's less this feeling that you're hungry and you want to express yourself a lot, which I think was more present before. And now with more professional work, just also drawing takes time, so much time. So a lot of it is dedicated to commissions or professional work. I think it's different. And I don't know. Sometimes I also feel like social media affects this, because you feel like a lot of comic artists publish their work online, in the carousel format. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. I think some people did really fun work publishing serialized comics online, but I feel like there's a way of expressing yourself online, and sometimes it's like you think, oh, I have to write this way for this app.
Yeah.
And so it makes me not want to do it.
Yeah.
So lately I haven't done a lot, to be honest. I should get back into that.
All right. Hey, Tracy.
Hi.
Okay. So we're going to do something which is called Just Google Me. So I'm going to type in your name on Google, and I'm going to head to Google Images, and I want you to tell me some of the backstories behind some of the images that I see. So maybe let's start with this guy, which is part of a Beirut Groove Collective series that you've done. But tell me a little bit about this one and what you remember about putting these types of posters together.
This one was very fun to make. I think I wanted a very graphic aesthetic, a bit inspired by matchboxes, this kind of frame. And I think I was looking at this phase. I was looking into Indian miniatures, the kind of religious a bit drawings, and sometimes they have crazy characters. I think the two in the front that I saw somewhere, and I was like, I want to put these in a poster. And I think this one was really fun to make.
Did you approach all the BGC the BGC posters the same way?
I think it depends. Each one has different inspiration. For instance, this one was for a gig in China. Yeah. So I was looking a bit at, the communist China posters. If you see this kind of like everything is going towards one point, which is to the bottom left. And and these two big characters. So it's a bit inspired by the propaganda posters. But yeah, so I try to be playful each time and find an angle. It's fun to draw.
I love it. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your sunglasses. Let's talk about kind of the way you approach these types of posters or these types of works. What do you remember about this?
So this is actually based. It's like a cover, if you want, in poster terms, of a film poster that already exists. So. And I was part of a collective for a short time, and we had these like monthly, or I don't remember, like prompts, which could be, it was just like the color orange, and I don't remember what the prompt was exactly, honestly, but I was like, okay, I've always loved this poster, and it's an actual movie called The Dark Sunglasses, so yeah, just for fun I did this, and I printed some.
Amazing. Okay, I want to come to Bloody Beirut. Hold on. I saw it down here somewhere. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Beirut Bloody Beirut. Was this always going to be the cover?
I think I did a few sketches. But this one was like inspired by the kind of pulpy novels, covers that you find maybe in the US or whatever. But there's always like this main character who's like a woman and something is happening to her. And so I thought it was fun for this novel because it's kind of a suspense graphic novel, like to use this aesthetic. Yeah, I don't think there were other. I think they were all in this type of this aesthetic.
Yeah. When you're putting something like this together, can I ask a really like simple question?
Mm-hmm.
How do you come across the idea of which frames are going to feature color and which ones are not? Like, do you have a philosophical approach to that? Or is there like a logistical one? It's just easier to do black and white? Or did you have a frame of like, okay, no, I actually want to have it look a specific way?
I think it really depends. I personally love the black and white aesthetic. I think there's something like very, very personal about it. You feel like you're really in the author's world. I don't know if that makes sense, and for this book specifically, I wanted this, night suspense, dangerous vibe to the book. So I thought this was perfect, and I was very inspired by like Munoz, who's an Argentinian illustrator, comic artist, who also draws the city a lot, and he draws like New York a lot when it was grimy. So yeah, I wanted kind of the same for Beirut for this one. Then I added some colors, and there's a party scene where they do drugs.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's the only scene that has colors. So this wasn't really, it was a question of time too, but I was also convinced.
Because you use...
Sorry, yeah.
No. Yeah. You were saying it's also a question of time, but you're also...
But no, I was also convinced that black and white was the perfect aesthetic for the story.
it's funny because you use colors, I feel like the color palette that you choose are really, really recognizable. Do you feel like you go through phases where there's this sort of purple, black and sort of purple phase, and then you go through sort of moments and generations, or is it all mixed?
It's all mixed. I think I use very flat colors, like not a lot of it's not like painting. It's just like flats that I put down, and I think I just found that it suits my aesthetic because I have like this kind of thick line. But sorry, I didn't really answer your question. Were you asking me about the purple?
No, I was just wondering if you sort of go through phases, like if there's like a period of time where you're like, oh, I can't stand looking at that color anymore. I've killed that color. I've used it a million times. I can't.
It's true. I think I tend to use red a lot, blue and purple. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish. Like sometimes you see other friends or artists coloring style, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. And so it's something you can do. You can like use another colorist to work with. Yeah, definitely. I think about this. But I tend to go towards this kind of flat, bold colors. But yeah, sometimes I want to try something different.
Is there one project from of yours that you feel like is totally underappreciated? You think to yourself, you're like, man, it's so good and it doesn't get as much love as it should?
Good question. Yeah, I definitely feel that for some comics that I did, maybe that or other stuff that I didn't showcase so much, or that didn't get exposed as much. Yeah, definitely. And you're like, oh, I spent 40 hours drawing this, but it's not out there. But I can't tell it for a specific one. It's just like a lot of different.
Are they published and they just don't get
Yeah.
Are they published and they just don't get love, or they're not even out there?
I think it's a mix. Yeah, it's definitely a mix. There was something I did for the.
Okay, the last one I want to do is I wanted to ask you about. No, go ahead. There's something that you did for
children, and I don't know why it's not published yet, but it was supposed to be in Arabic, zines for children to draw about their dreams, things like that. And it took a lot of time, so I want to see it published somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'll publish it myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Okay, the last one I want to ask you about is Guantanamo Voices. What do you remember about putting this together?
What do I remember? So, Guantanamo Voices, I was really interested in the subject because the journalist who worked on it, Shay Merck, really went there and interviewed prisoners and people who worked in the around the prison, like lawyers or like employees. So I learned a lot, and it was a tough subject because most of it happens in the prison. So you're like, okay, how can I make this look interesting graphically? And I was very moved by the story of the main character, who's like this Indian American lawyer, really strong woman, and we started talking after she saw the comic, and also by the prisoner's story, which was very, very like very sad story. Yeah, I had no idea how bad it was there until I worked on that book. And I think I like the graphics on this one because they were very simple, but like kind of I thought the banners were strong. I don't know.
Putting yourself out there, I feel like there's two ways to do it. There is a authentic, sort of artistically authentic way where you have to expose yourself and you have to allow yourself to be truthful and to like actually get out how you're feeling. And it's irrespective of the medium, whether it's a zine or on Instagram or a book or a newspaper or a bifold or whatever it is. It's like needs to be truthful.
Yeah.
And then there's another way, which is more cynical, which is you need to put yourself, your face, and your opinions and your, in some ways, your entire body in the frame. Like, I need to put myself out there. I need to expose my actual physical appearance, right? To be like, establish yourself as like
branding.
Branding.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I feel like I see that happening. I see that at play all the time. Do you feel that pressure? First of all, is it imagined? Maybe I'm imagining it. Or do you feel that pressure?
No, I think it's definitely real. And some people, I think definitely I do it for fun sometimes. I think as long as you don't take it too seriously, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, that's what everyone has become a brand, basically. Now I'm becoming very... but yeah, I think there's this pressure for anyone, not just us. And I think you can play around with it, and it's fine. And I think some people master being like scamming with it, you know?
There are some masters.
I'm not going to say names. I think good for them if they can get stuff out of it. But there's definitely people... You know what I mean? There's people who I feel like are so good at their branding and selling themselves. Yeah. Even if the work is not that good, they can really profit from it well. And then you see people who, like friends or people I know, who are so hardworking. Work is amazing. And they're really struggling because, I mean, not necessarily struggling, but they just don't know how to advertise themselves or they don't care. So, yeah, you have to find the right place.
Do you feel like you found it?
Maybe. I think, yeah. I think it's happened a bit naturally. And maybe I was playing around with it. A lot of people are like, oh, Tracy, the sunglasses. So, yeah. Sunglasses, hair, my shoes. So, and I think also, I'm like, yeah, I wish I could wear them all the time. And but it happened naturally. I thought it was fun.
You were wearing them now.
They're here.
They're here just in case.
No, it's so true. I think when I started doing it, it became the thing. Because I also drew a lot of people with sunglasses.
For sure.
Just like this vibe. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I was having fun with it. And then there's the way like the media brands you a bit. That's like, they're like, oh, Arab woman, I don't know what. So you're like, whatever, if it helps me, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, like the way... So now that you're in Philly and you have more of a global audience and there are more people who are aware of your work outside of the Arab world, do you feel like the sort of orientalization of your work there is very different than the way people perceive you here?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Listen, for now in the US, I didn't feel like they were orientalizing. This is a good thing. I feel like this type of thing came more from Europe, when I would like have a European magazine or media like writing up an article or whatever. There are always these questions. How does it feel as a woman to draw? I don't know, and I never got weirdly this kind of framing in the US. I think, it's so many immigrants there. People are more used to, they know how to talk to you without being, disrespectful or whatever. So yeah, I didn't feel like this in the US. I think sometimes, Honik, sometimes you feel like they're. What was I gonna say? Do you have to speak to a certain audience? And this is a bit hard. لأنه كمان there is a difference between you and between the, let's say, Arab Americans who grew up there. And sometimes there is like a bit of commodification of the like of the culture here, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something to watch out for.
Yeah, there's definitely like subcultures for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed more illustrators that you're paying attention to coming out of other places in the Arab world over the last like 15 years, where you're starting to notice more colleagues from North Africa, from the GCC, from Iraq, from Egypt and Sudan, Wain Makan? Are you noticing more and more folks whose work you're paying attention to?
Yeah, there's some that I noticed, of course, and some that I meet in person. Like right now, I was just in a festival, literary festival in Manchester. There was two amazing cartoonists. One is from Morocco, Zainab Fasiki, and one is from Tunis, Noah Hbaib. And so sometimes I meet them in festivals. Since COVID, there hasn't been so much exchange and festivals. And since I'm in the US, I don't get as invited. Like, please invite me. Because it's far and it's more expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, before the US, I used to go like Cairo Comics, which I love. Like one of my favorite comics festival, where you could meet people from all over, comic artists from the region. Yeah, now that I'm in the US, I know a few. But yeah, like I said before, it's huge, so you don't like meet that often.
Yeah. Before we started, we were talking that we share like a biographical commonality that we both spent a lot of our childhood in Cyprus.
Yeah.
And when you moved here as a kid, like for university, I wonder what it was like actually moving back here, and did you feel at ease? Did you feel like you could be a part of the cultural scene quite quickly?
Yeah, it was it was a shock coming back here because I hadn't lived here as a young adult, and it was very messy at first. And I think I was very young, so I didn't really know even what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew I like drawing, whatever. So I think at first, I was very confused. But then the more the years, like the more I started to specialize in comics, the more also I became comfortable with the city, right? Because it takes like 3 years to specialize in Alba back then.
Yeah.
I became really comfortable and more in love with the city. Like it became my thing. And there was a good environment. I think it happened very smoothly.
Yeah.
And so the last year of my studies, this is when I did my first book, Beirut Bloody Beirut. And back then I was like, it had been 5 years in the city. And I was having fun, back then. It was like, going out and having crazy, adventures in the city. So that all like came to life with this book, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you reflect on the book now, like 10 years later, how do you feel about it?
I think it was a great experience because I remember back then we had to choose, like either we do some illustration project or a comic book. And I still feel this way. I was saying that, it's too much work. I'm not going to do a book. I'm going to do like, a series of posters or something. And my teacher and like mentor, they're like convinced me. She was like, you're never gonna, like, this is a great occasion to work on a book for a year. You're surrounded. There's a framework. Like, so it convinced me. And And then when you write something fun, really in comics, it has to be so fun. Like you have to want to draw every page. And as we were writing the script, we would brainstorm together. I was just so excited to do it. I didn't even see the time passing, like, because then it took a year, and then after that I like fixed it for a year and stuff, another year. So yeah, it was honestly a great experience.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of mistakes in it, stuff I would draw differently, but I love that time of my life.
If you were to do a sequel in 2024, what would it be called and what would it be about?
Honestly, yeah, it's something I have in mind. So I've been having on my mind for a while. Maybe I should go back to school to work on it. But I think it would be the same character. I don't know what it would be called, but it's her, like... I had this idea. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say it in case I want to do it. But it's okay. It will be different. It'll be here... like Beirut Bloody Beirut was her going to different neighborhoods with a car and stuff happening. This one would be like her going on having like love affairs with different people in different places, and them relating her to different histories of the cities, if you know what I mean. So, yes.
Do you feel like Beirut has changed since 2019 for you? Does it feel different?
Since 2019, yeah, it definitely feels different. I mean, everything. It's how it's really hard to explain that feeling, but some things are familiar, but you always know, like, okay, I'm in the same bar with the same friends doing the same, but this is just temporary. It's not our lives like before. So yeah, it's definitely different in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, when you're here, is that difference something that inspires work, or is it something that numbs your ability to be creative?
When I'm here?
Yeah.
No, I think it's the opposite. I don't know. I think it's not harder for me to be productive here. I think quite the opposite, because knowing that at any time I can go take a walk or see friends, or I think this is something lacking in the US. There's not this culture of lingering and or street life, and it's something بالعكس, being in the US has blocked my work more than being here. Here just walking now, I see how Beirut, every time you see it from a different angle or a street or something, like right now walking towards here, I saw the building on top of Barbar, and I never noticed the actual building, and it's crazy. It's really nice building. So
yeah, of course. Every time anyone walks out of this building and turns right, just yesterday, somebody walked out with me and looked to the right and saw the building above Barbar, and I could just see him looking at every balcony and every window pane. Yeah.
No, it's an amazing one. So yeah, this kind of stuff makes you want to draw, like so many weird buildings. It's a very like drawable city, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it an emotional connection? Like when you're drawing Beirut, you're drawing these little things, and you're creating these stories of this girl walking around and going neighborhood to neighborhood. Yeah. Is it related to you exploring it for you? Is it somehow like actually mapped out your personality or your connection to this place?
Yeah, I think definitely much more than other places, because it has this crazy street life, Beirut, and you can connect to it. Again, going back, I know I'm super critical of the US all the time, but there's not this street life, so it's not. I don't feel like I am part of the fabric of the city in a way as much.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I was living here, a lot of my work was based on actual stuff I lived, or it could be surreal, but like inspired by a feeling I had or something.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Okay, when we wrap up, I want to ask you for recommendations. I didn't ask you this beforehand, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you give a couple either books or artists that people should go check out that you think are like, these are great? This is some of them are well known, some of them aren't well known, but if you're interested in comic books or interested in illustrators, from Lebanon, from the Arab world. These are some people that are worth checking out, or some books or anthologies or stuff that are worth checking out.
Okay, well, on the spot, hello. It's hard to ask me for people in the region because I feel bad if I forget a friend.
Well, if you forget anyone, you can add them, and we'll add an article on the magazine with more.
Definitely. Okay, I'm trying to think off the top of it. Well, my good friend Joseph K, he has this amazing book. It's published in France now, and also in the US in English. It's called Restless in English and L'Intranquille in French. And I love this book because it reminds me of like the past few years before we left Beirut, how it felt, and it's a beautiful book. So I definitely recommend. It's for sale, I think, in Lebanon too. What else? I'm trying to think of what I've read recently. Do you want recommendations from Beirut? Or?
No, from anywhere.
I'm trying to think what I've read recently. I read this comic. It's a French, Lebanese, Armenian author called Charles Ververian. And the comic is called Une éducation orientale in French. And it talks about his childhood in Beirut and how it's really moving book. And visually it's amazing too. His childhood in Beirut and how like his grandma's house where he grew up is not here anymore. I don't know, it's like very well written because it talks about the past and the present after the explosion. And yeah, I definitely recommend this too. These are just like recent stuff.
Amazing. This is great. This is great. Like somebody like you, are you constantly seeing new stuff that new illustrators and new comic book artists that you don't even know about? Or is it like really a tiny community where everyone really knows everyone?
The comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you always discover new stuff whenever I go to, this is why I go to festivals, comics fests and stuff. But it is kind of small, like most of the names, I kind of know them. At least I've read them and stuff. But there's always new people too. I think now there's a lot of really young, talented people taking over here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we wrap up, where can people find new stuff that's coming out, unnamed projects that you can't announce yet? Where can people find stuff about you, and aside from Instagram?
Where? Aside from Instagram? Where it's mostly... I don't know if I have any events planned now. Okay. There might be later in the summer.
Okay.
I would love to do like live drawing concerts again.
Amazing.
So we're trying to plan that with friends. I think it'll happen. So.
Okay. Amazing. Well, yeah. Tracy, thanks so much, Anjad. It's like such an honor to have you in the studio.
Thank you so much. This went by so fast. I didn't realize.